Okay, so so we were talking just a little bit about taxes in Lyme, and there was a tax group I was maybe thinking to talk to. But yeah, I lived in the center of Lyme.
Near the library, like on the green?
Almost. You go a little bit past the church north on Route 10, and there's, you know where like Tuckaway Timber used to be, and there's a kind of an office warehouse building on the left?
Okay.
Not too far.
Past Stella's around the corner past the cemetery?
Yeah.
Okay.
Past the cemetery. Yeah. Across from that kind of office building is where I used to live. There's a new construction house.
Okay.
A little bit of a field. I owned that one. And so, but I only lived there end of 05, 6, and 7 until I found this land.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved here into a mobile home and then built the house. Moved in 2012. When did you move here?
To the Upper Valley or to this house?
This house.
This house in 07.
No,
sorry, 17.
Yeah, okay. That was before me. Right, 17. That's right. Oh.
Quiet. These guys are going to disrupt your entire... You can't get anything done when there's a dog present.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me to ignore them. These two like to play. Okay.
Go on. Go on.
So, I remember one thing I just had a random question about was, aside from taxes, which, and I'm not going to meet with that group, I think, because they haven't gotten back to me, but the guiding principles, if I can remember of these, help me one is to apply, as far as possible, engineering and scientific principles to whatever, if there's a problem or issue. It doesn't have to be a problem or issue we talked about, but if there is, trying to, and then the second one is focus on what is right, if you can find such a thing, and not who is right, not which political party, not which, said this or that, but what is right. And then the third one was to the maximum extent possible, be friends afterward.
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember we talked a little bit about Dartmouth and the TAs at Dartmouth and the different things that are happening at Dartmouth. And I know in the Thayer School there was a seminar of how to recruit students in the modern era after the Supreme Court decision. You can't consider
about affirmative action.
Yeah, okay. You can't consider that alone or whatever. I don't even know exact language, but that can't be somehow a huge thing. If that defines who they are or their life experience specifically, okay, in their essay, you can take that, but just checking a box and having that be a preferential treatment. So I was wondering if if Dartmouth had come and talked to you about how to recruit students now, or how do you decide on your TAs, things like that, and what do you think about that?
Well, they have not on an individual level, but I don't think it has a lot to do with recruiting graduate students either. Well, I'm not sure actually if it applies to graduate school, but
okay.
The way I understand the Supreme Court decision is that race cannot be used as a deciding factor in admissions to university or college.
Yeah.
But selection of a graduate student, at least in my case, is, just by its nature is irrespective of race and gender and all that stuff, because it starts with intellectual interests and the fit in a laboratory.
Yeah.
Is there an intellectual match such that I could provide guidance and mentorship to a student because we have common interests that would allow me to help them develop their ideas and to guide their research so that, to put them on a trajectory to become a professional academic.
Right.
I think the institution, at the level of the institution, colleges and universities are trying to build a student body that will serve itself, in terms of the whole. Mm-hmm. And one of the guiding principles, I think, in academia is that a diverse student body is better for everybody.
Yeah.
Which is a principle with which I agree to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But with the Supreme Court now is just saying that those decisions can't be made based on race alone.
Yeah. Yeah, graduate students are, the selection process is very different from undergraduate. Almost at every institution, I think, because an undergraduate is supposed to be, well, it's not this match of, here's what you want to study, and here's if you fit into my lab, and I got a grant for this, and that's exactly what you want to do, and all this thing. Undergraduate's supposed to be more of a hands-off from the professors, right?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, I think your undergraduate is both about figuring out what you're good at and what you want to do, but also just more generally trying to become a more interesting person, mm-hmm. Which is why I think that the liberal arts education is so important, because, kids come in and they think, I think it's something like 85% of first year students at Dartmouth say they're pre-med. And that number gets whittled down dramatically over the course of those 4 years. But they all come in saying, oh, yeah, I want to study chemistry or biology or something, and then go to medical school. And I think the best advice that we as faculty can give those kids is, okay, I mean, that's all well and good, but make sure that you dabble in a little of everything, because you might think you want to be a physician today, but until you take that course in Greek mythology or whatever, you don't know who you are or what you want to do. And so it's a discovery process that once you're in graduate school is still, I think, important, but the funnel has gotten a lot narrower. And so your discovery now is more about the specific research questions you're interested in, and the theories you want to test and so on.
I know MIT's like that. They have professors are very hands-off for the undergraduate, because that's more of they might know what they want to study, but it's broader. And then, but professors can be hands-on.
Broader than it would be in graduate school, you mean?
Yeah, broader education.
So MIT's not a liberal arts institution, though, is it?
No, but they're in a similar way hands-off on undergrad.
Okay.
Professors are told not to promise, of course, that you'll get in, or try to influence in hardly any way the undergraduates. They're told, don't even. But for graduate students, a professor can almost 95% get the student they want.
That's how it is for us too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Although that's changing now more and more, especially now as the graduate students start talking about unionizing, which I don't know how much you know about this, but that's ongoing. Thayer did. Yeah. This just happened in the UC system, and one of the outcomes of that has been, my understanding is that the nominal graduate student salary is somewhere in the range of $50,000 a year. Mm-hmm. There are graduate students now that make more than lecturers that already hold PhDs. And because of the increasing cost of taking in graduate students, the total number of fellowships that are available to graduate students has dwindled significantly. And so the days when I was at UCLA as a postdoc, the lab that I was in had 9, 10, 11 graduate students and 4 or 5 postdocs and that sort of thing. And it was a very vibrant, there was this critical mass of scientists that were interacting, and it made it a very vibrant intellectual environment to be in. Those days, I think, are gone, at least for now, because the cost of bringing in that many students is prohibitive. And so labs now, I think, if they can take 1 or 2 graduate students, and not every lab gets new students now every year.
Yeah.
And so if that happens here, or when that happens here, likely, the research culture will change dramatically.
You don't think? What if grants? What if the amount of grants, follows commensurately, and so you have this? you get.
Do you know something about the federal government budget that I don't? Because in my experience,
the budget's ballooning, right? In that sense, but the grants haven't followed.
no.
You're still competing for the sometimes as little as $200K, right? And
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe we just have to write bigger numbers there when we apply.
Maybe.
Of course, they specify how much they expect you to apply for.
Yeah. And then, for every dollar that you get from the federal government, the institution takes 69 cents right off the top. So, it's harder and harder to fund your own research, let alone to support graduate students and postdocs.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. About this, how many students you can have.
And that's important, right? Because faculty have responsibilities that go well beyond mentoring their graduate students. They have to teach classes and attend meetings and things, which is trivial, but for the most part. But they're writing papers and pulled in a dozen different directions. And to have a well-trained graduate student traditionally has meant to have a lab that is full of people that can interact with each other, because there's a communal education that happens in graduate school.
Yeah. There's the ideal tiered system, or the what's been tried to happen is you got one, maybe two full professors, a couple of assistants, some postdocs, and your graduate students. I know when I arrived at MIT, that era was ending, but we still had it when I got there, because Kong was kind of, downsizing a little bit. But we had we had that structure. We had like 12 people.
What was downsizing? Kong
was Gene L. Kong was my advisor.
Oh, okay.
And he very well known, very very good, but was heading toward retirement, but I got.
You always have to qualify very well known in scientific circles means like 2 or 3 people have heard of him.
There was a whole extra session at one of our main electrical engineering conferences in memoriam of him when he passed away. It's like 300 people in there. So there were some people in there.
Okay.
But yeah, I had.
But not Jimmy Page well known or.
No. But I had a graduate student kind of assigned to me, right, that I could go to with questions first. And then we had a postdoc,
there's a hierarchical.
Yeah, before we would get to Kong.
Right.
So, and it was good. It was very good. I learned a lot from them. They were pseudo-advisors, for me and so forth. Okay, so your recruitment process hasn't changed, really.
No. Typically for me and others in our department, at least, graduate students reach out and say, hey, I'm applying to graduate school. I'm interested in topic XYZ, life history, evolution, or something like that. And I've been reading, some of your papers, and I think, our interests overlap. Would you be interested in taking students? And if the answer is yes, then that initiates a conversation that usually continues over maybe half a dozen emails or something back and forth about what ideas do you want to pursue? Yeah. Why do you think my lab is a good fit for you? That kind of thing. You weed out the students that just want to come to Dartmouth because it's Dartmouth, and they're applying to all the Ivies, and because they like the name. You weed those out, and going from there. And
yeah, now, I remember TAs one time. I'll try to remember what you said, but there was some guidance to pick TAs that were diverse. Remember that? Maybe they didn't say it to you specifically, but they said it to broadly at Dartmouth. They said pick a male.
Well,
female.
you might. Oh, I think you're referring to. We have a foreign studies program where we take. Typically 15 undergraduates to Costa Rica and the Cayman Islands, and they do 6 weeks of field ecology in the tropics and then 3 weeks of marine ecology in the Cayman Islands. And we take 2 TAs. because it's a lot to juggle all these students and gear and travel and field experiments and things like that.
Right.
And I think that the guiding principles for picking TAs for this program, which is a lot of the graduate students want to do it because it's a unique experience in a bunch of beautiful places, and there's a lot to like about it, is to try to represent the students that are going on the program. So, you want a male TA and a female TA so that everybody has somebody that they feel like they can go to.
Right.
And I think this might be the conversation you're thinking about. My observation, I think at the time was, well, if everybody should have a TA that they can go and talk to and that they can identify with, then you'd need, a TA that represented every ethnic minority, that represented every sexual orientation, and that's just not possible.
Right.
And it's not possible on that foreign studies program. It's also not possible in any classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
right, because then you'd have male and female, but do you want to have one or both of them not gay or whatever, or do you want to have one or both of them this or that, or one or both of them this race or that race? And pretty soon you only have 2 sample points and like 8 dimensions of things you want to sample, and you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The social scientists refer to this as intersectionality, I think, where, it's that people's identity has to include all of the intersections of all of their different experiences and backgrounds and so on. So I'm not just a white male. I'm a white male of Dutch heritage from the Midwest, or I'm a married white male that's different than a single white male. And of course, these identities, are not that significant because we as married white men from North America pretty much have the same shared experience, right? Mm-hmm. But for, let's say, a woman's particular experience can't be generalized to a black woman's experience or to a gay black woman's experience. And so this principle of intersectionality attempts, I think, and I'm not, to be clear, I'm not a social scientist, right? But attempts to outline the significant differences that these different subgroups of people experience. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that, so there are the same genetic principles apply, right? Like a certain gene will affect a phenotype. Mm-hmm. So you get let's say the phenotype is a behavior. But if that gene interacts with other genes, the behavior changes or the phenotype changes. Mm-hmm. And so there are phenotypes like this lizard that I studied as a graduate student had the same species of male lizard had one of 3 different throat colors. They were either orange, blue, or yellow. Yeah. Okay. And that difference in throat color was associated with a whole slew of different behaviors. The orange males, not only were they orange, but they also had larger bodies. They had higher levels of testosterone. They had higher running endurance. They guarded big territories that had multiple females on them.
Okay.
Blue males had a blue throat color, but they also had lower endurance. They were monogamous. Blue males are mate guarders. They have a single female that they hang out with. Mm-hmm. And yellow males, the gene that controls yellow throat color is also associated with genes that lead them to have no territories. They don't guard territories. They don't guard females. They have very low testosterone. And in fact, behaviorally, they mimic females.
Okay.
And so each of those different throat colors is controlled by a gene, but when it's associated with it's all the same genetic locus, by the way, mm-hmm. the throat color locus, but when it's associated with other genes, it changes the behavior. And the more and more genes that you add in to the mix, the more you go from these discrete orange, blue, yellow categories. I am an orange lizard, I am a blue lizard. As soon as you start adding additional genes, the distribution of those types mm-hmm. goes from discrete, orange, blue, and yellow, to normal. So suddenly you go from I identify as this thing, but then through intersectionality, you add all of these and as soon as you have identified everything about that person that that satisfies their version of themselves.
Lizard in this case.
Or person.
Okay.
Who are they? They're just an individual at that point.
Yeah.
So how do you go? This is the behavioral principle. What I'm saying is that this behavioral principle of genetic interaction, what's called epistasis, sort of, in my mind, explains the challenge of identity politics. I mean, I didn't mean to go down this route, but identity politics, where, okay, you can't just identify this lizard as orange because it's many other things. And pretty soon it gets hard to categorize things, and you just have to consider the individual.
Right.
So there's utility, I think, in and I teach this in my classes, there's utility in discretely compartmentalizing things. What Richard Dawkins described as the tyranny of the discontinuous mind, is that we want to put things in boxes, but there's a cost. The tyranny of the discontinuous mind is the cost of, well, if you say that this is an orange lizard, then you miss out on all of the interesting underlying attributes of that thing that make it different from everything else. And I think,
well, it's hard for humans. We still have this biological brain, right? Or maybe we always will, but we can only concentrate or think of things only to a certain complexity. And, our brains are so good at making quick decision on low information that we want to categorize, we want to compartmentalize, we want to say, do we have to run or not?
Right, for sure. Yeah, right. It's all, I think, at least grounded in this xenophobia, right? That is this first principle of survival. Are you friend or foe? Are you like me or are you different?
Right. And because that's kind of that used to, for millions of years, whatever, decided our fate. If we run or we don't. And so our brains are very quick at that kind of thing. Very natural for us to think that way. On the other hand, as you were talking, I've thought this before, only humans, and you actually may have comment on this more than maybe a lot of other people, but only humans have orders of magnitude more complex thinking capability, in my mind. So, the dogs here, even the chimpanzees get to about an 18-month-old, as I understand it. A couple of signs, I want an apple. But we go orders of magnitude beyond that. We go to mathematics, we go to figuring things out, we go to quantum mechanics, orders of magnitude. And so, I think, along with that, it's incumbent upon us to concentrate on things beyond other animals, if we can. And this is encapsulated in the Martin Luther King phrase of, you need to treat people based on the content of their characters. And for me, that's beyond the animal, right? That's what they like, what they want to study, or, their choices, how they go about things, how they interact with people.
Their value systems.
Right. And that's what I think is much more important to focus on than their throat color.
Right, but I think that the distinction that they're making in the social sciences is that the content of someone's character is influenced by all of those by their throat color, because that dictates the experience that they will have growing up, and those experiences are what shape our identities. Yeah. I mean, it's a frustrating thing because, I think those of us who are slightly older than the current generation of college students struggle with identity politics and naming conventions and all of this stuff. And I admit I'm in that camp. It's a challenge. It's frustrating sometimes, but at the same time, I see the point. I just don't think that it has been fully fleshed out yet what the best approach to integrating all of these sensitivities and so on is. I mean, there's a point at which you wanting to define yourself and your own experience goes beyond you and starts to impose itself on other people. Yeah. And I don't know where that boundary is, but I know that we're not we're not at the right point on the number line yet, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the throat color, so to speak, your background, does lead to a part of your character. That's a good point. That's a good point. Um, and then I didn't write it down. I brought my notebook and I didn't write it down. Right. Oh yeah. Okay. But you know how another thing of humans that maybe you might have come on as well is that if they can get advantage, some people will. If they have a way to get an advantage, some people will exploit it. And my point, the reason
Everybody would. Show me somebody who wouldn't. I don't.
well, it depends on the advantage and it depends on how much it negatively impacts others and things like that. The reason why I say that at this moment is that there are people who will exploit the identity or tell others that you got to let me exploit your identity or something for gain. Now, not everyone does that, I don't think, but some will. And so you get this.
Well, for example, what do you mean? Like a student who is in the classroom and demands a certain pronoun or something like that, and that it's not an actual preference on their part, but they use it to exploit their classmates or the professor or get special attention or something.
Not everyone will do it right. Special attention, or they might be getting a bad grade. I mean, it could be exploited. And there are places where people are accused. Now, I don't think that that's awfully common.
I've never seen that as far as I know, unless I've been exploited without realizing it. But okay, carry on. Go ahead.
So I think sometimes things like this have been hijacked for other people's gains. Like, not every organization is perfect or imperfect. I mean, they're all imperfect, let's say. But for example, the Black Lives Matters movement, I think some have tried to exploit that for either their own or some other gain, while others have no. We have these principles, and others want to hijack it for these principles and so forth. So it's and then when there are those cases, others will point to the exceptions and the bad behavior, the bad apple behavior, and say that defines all of you.
Right.
You know, and it goes. A lot of people do this on all sides. So it's tricky. It's very tricky.
Wasn't there that weather person who was a white woman, but she claimed she identified as black, and I think used that as a means to get preference?
Louise was in the name somewhere.
I can't remember.
I can't. Yes, right. And she exploited it. Well, and there was the case. I don't know all about this, but there was the case of what's the Massachusetts senator claimed to be Indian.
Oh, right, Pocahontas. That's what Trump called her.
Well, it'll come to us.
Yeah.
But that one, and it's clear she wasn't, or not more than anyone else.
But she was, but like 1/19th or something like that.
Yeah, and not more than kind of, a third of America.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
So that happens, and then people will say, oh, look. And there is kind of an interesting interplay between exploiting it and having a valid, more of a valid thing to say about it.
I wonder how much of it is any different than, some of it, if it's exploitation, some of it is clearly different than this other example, but I wonder some of it might just be legitimate pride in a sense of identity. And so, my grandparents on my dad's side were immigrants from the Netherlands. And my dad is a first generation American. And my mom's side is a mix of a bunch of different French and German and English, I think. And that side of the family's gene pool is less well understood. But because I grew up in a kind of a Dutch environment, not just my family, but many of the families around me in the Midwest were also of Dutch heritage. I went to a school that was, 95% Dutch, with Van der Zee, Van der Zaan, Van der Vandenberg, everybody had a Dutch last name.
Okay.
Holland, Michigan was right down the road from our house, right? Yeah. New Zealand, all these places. And so I grew up proud of that, to a certain extent, proud of that Dutch heritage. And I'll joke about, I have a dog named Dutch.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, is that where that came from?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And, And my wife the other day said, you're not really Dutch. You're only, half Dutch, something like that. And that really cut me.
Okay. Okay.
Because there's a certain pride in feeling a connection to that, even though it's not mine. I've been to the Netherlands. That's about as Dutch as I can really claim to be.
Huh. Yeah,
I've never used my 50% Dutchness to exploit anyone, as far as I know.
Well, I don't know if anyone would listen to that, but and I think some pride, some happiness in your background and identity is, that's good. That makes us all different and interesting and flavorful, right? But this is what I was writing, because it was when I think there comes a point where some people are willing to not only take pride or being happy for their group, but it can be used to put other groups down.
Of course.
And that, I think, for me, I think that's different. I'm not saying you said it was the same thing, but I think that crosses a little bit of a line to put others down.
Yeah, that's the human condition.
Another human trait.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Talking to an evolutionary biologist, I like hearing that perspective. But yeah, that's what I was talking about. Some people want to get advantage. And
I'm just amazed that you keep saying some people. Some people would use something to their advantage to gain. Who wouldn't? It is the human condition. Show me an individual that would not take advantage. So the new pope, when he took over, right, the mouthpiece of God, decides not to live in the papal palace. He's not going to wear the fancy shoes or the golden signet or whatever. I don't remember all of the gear that he turned down, but he was going to live this life of, this austere condition. He got something out of that. Mm-hmm. And maybe it wasn't, Machiavellian, but he gained notoriety. He became more widely loved, certainly than the previous pope, who granted was a youth Nazi and all that. But, there was an advantage to be had by doing those things. And I think we all do that. We all seek to maximize our, whether it's power or wealth or station or whatever it might be, by not whatever means we can. I wouldn't say that, but I don't think anyone is immune to, wanting to, or to exploiting circumstance to their benefit. Because ultimately we're all looking out for, our families, ourselves, the people that are closest to us. Aren't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, and to some extent. Now, why do you do? So you will do something for your family. Those are the closest to you. You will do things just for them that doesn't benefit you necessarily.
Yeah, the process, the principle of kin selection, right? Okay. But we share genes.
Okay.
So whatever benefit my children get, I experience through. This is the evolutionary principle that was invented to explain the evolution of altruism. J.B.S. Haldane came up with this principle that kin selection could evolve because I will help someone else who has genes in common with me. They could be direct kin or they could be distant relatives, but the benefit that I receive will be greater the more genes we have in common, right? So there's this thing called a relatedness coefficient. Yeah. So for me and my children, that relatedness coefficient is 0.5. They share exactly 50% of their genes with me. Yeah. So if I do something that benefits my child and it allows her to then go on and reproduce more than she otherwise would have, let's say I save her life and she goes on and has 2 kids. She has made 1 genetic copy of me, statistically speaking. Okay. Right? If it's a cousin you have to save more cousins, or they'd have to have more babies to have the same advantage to you. This is where this famous quote from famous again in scientific realm. 3 people have heard this quote. Haldane said, "I would gladly give my life for 1 brother, 2 children, 4 cousin or something, 8 cousins or something like that." And he kept going.
Okay.
So yeah, altruism, when it directly benefits or your own kin, or indirectly through some other degree of relatedness.
Okay, and then that if you allow that we may have been pack animals kind of thing, and our tribe was kind of all related to us in a way, then you work for your tribe even though there may not be direct benefit. And so you're grouping the altruism into that mentality.
Yeah, certainly at some point in human history, we lived in very small groups that had high degrees of relatedness.
Yeah.
Kin groups, whether it was maybe families and cousins, first and second cousins, or who, I don't know how big those groups were, but.
And then your kids or their kids will support you when you're older, and it does benefit you eventually, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure all of altruism, it may have come from there, but again, with this beyond the animals, human capability, orders of magnitude, I think there's a lot of just helping for help's sake.
Well, okay, really?
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Well, churches. That's one of the things. I'm not saying every church does it perfectly, or every church says the same thing.
No, but they've got it figured out, right? That's not altruism. Why do you do good in church?
For the benefit after you're dead.
That's right.
Okay.
How can I ensure that I'll still get some benefit even when I'm gone?
Now,
you've loaned me tools before at no apparent benefit to you, right? Hey, Ben, I need a hammer. Oh, just get one out of my garage.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know how valuable this is, but my undying friendship must count for something. There is a reward for everything.
There's only if you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then why do you feel good?
Could you do something good for someone and feel terrible about it?
Well, you know how the word good and terrible could have 100 factors in it. And a few of them may be one and a few of them may be the other, terrible or good. And then you have to coalesce it all into one answer.
Yeah.
So lots of our decisions are...
Are you saying, Ben, that nothing is truly binary?
Decisions are often gray like that. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of churchgoers would say that in the end, they do it not for the eternal reward. It becomes its own end. And they would do it even if there was nothing after they die, kind of thing. It becomes a habit. It becomes a learned, good, positive feedback.
It's interesting. I wonder if you could map the evolution of religion on those principles. Like, for example, I think Baptists believe that you're saved. Salvation depends on good works. And Calvinists, the tradition in which I was raised, believe that you can't do anything to save yourself. In fact, man is lower than a worm, according to John Calvin, but it's only through the grace of God that you're saved. So then,
and that's already decided,
right? Well, yeah, there are different veins in Calvinism too. One of which is predestination, and another is not.
Okay.
And that's even within Calvinism, there's that disparity.
Okay.
And I don't even know which one I am. I may be one of the 6,000 or something like that. I might not. Probably not.
6,000 that what?
That are saved. I don't know. It's probably more than that. Heaven's got to be bigger than 6,000 people. But yeah, I don't know the number.
Yeah, so it becomes this, some will say that it just becomes this part of who they are, and they're not doing it for, and and I think humans, what about this? Humans, though, would portray more of that behavior than others, don't you think?
Portray more of what behavior?
Of this altruistic, wherever it came from, this helping others behavior.
You think?
Oh, yeah, look at our success. A lot of our success Yeah, we're good hunters, we're smart, but we help each other immensely.
True. How many, but not more than other animals?
No.
How many, you think?
As organization too, like our government, right, helps our people much more than it used to, for example, and much more than just meeting someone on the prairie. And I'm going to live first. Kind of, we help each other quite a bit as a. Maybe you were thinking individually, like I'm one person. Do I help someone else?
No, I'm thinking more like how many bees live in a beehive? Thousands. Thousands. Yeah. How many of those bees reproduce?
Well, the queen.
That's it.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
What does everybody else do? They give up their reproductive rights to the queen, and they all work as a colony for the queen. Everything in that hive except the queen is self-sacrificing, working for the good of the queen.
Yeah. Right. Which is what, if you want to model that, which is kind of what fiefdoms and kingdoms used to be in the Middle Ages, or where it's the stereotypical. Everyone supports these few at the top, right? But we have gradually, I think, gone away from that to republics, which are not as perfect, maybe not perfect.
Slightly more egalitarian than a beehive, is that what you're saying? But we're talking about who's more altruistic.
The human.
Is egalitarianism, does that equate to altruism? Or altruism is just sacrificing something of yourself for no gain or for the good of someone else, right?
Okay. So you may not want to count organizational help in this because it's not an individual doing it.
Right.
Oh, I see.
I would say. I would also say egalitarian is not. That's more everybody's getting something out of the system, and that's probably less altruistic because now everybody's looking out for themselves, even as they look out for someone else.
Yeah. Well, they let the organization look out for others. It's in a way that's where the organization look out for others, and then that absolves you of looking out for others. Right. There is some of that. When you don't have to, see it in your community, it's less of an impact to you that someone's hungry, right?
Yeah.
And if you just, click on the donate and someone else takes care of it, or the organization takes care of it, it doesn't impact you as much. That's
and it lets you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, good feedback. So there's some of that. That's an interesting thing that the organization taking care. But we all voted for that in a way at some point.
I didn't vote for that. I was just born into the system.
All right. You know what? That might be a good place to end.
To wrap?
Yeah, just to